On this episode of My First Quilt, we'll be patching together a cute little flamingo. Hi there, welcome to My First Quilt. I'm Sara Gallegos, and in this episode we are creating a beautiful pixelated animal quilt. There is an entire series of these patch pal patterns with all different types of animals, and it's a lot of pieces to put together, but it's fairly simple piecing. So I want to show you what we're going to start with. I have created the flamingo pattern. It's so adorable, and it's, like I said, it's a lot of pieces to keep together, but not too difficult. So let me talk to you a little bit about how to choose your fabrics. I'm going to pull the quilts out of the way and bring up some fabrics to check out. Now, when you're gathering the materials to create your flamingo, you'll find that the pattern calls for several different shades of pinks and greens. And you can, of course, go to your favorite local quilt shop and gather as many pinks and greens as go together as you would like. Or what I chose to do in mine is I used just two fabrics, but they happen to be gradiated fabrics. So on each of these pieces of fabric, it starts out dark and then moves its way toward light. And it actually goes from light back to dark on the opposite side of the fold. And I found it in both the pink and the green, and I thought that would be perfect for my flamingo. Another thing that you can do when you're planning out your colors for this project is you can always look at the wrong side of the fabrics too. Kind of a funny concept, we worry about using the wrong side, but on solids and gradiated fabrics like this, using the wrong side gives you a whole extra set of shades of color, and nobody really knows in the finished project that that was the wrong side of the fabric. So I love playing with gradiated or ombre fabrics like this because I can see several different shades all within one cut. Now let's talk about how we put the project together. So in each of these Patch Pals patterns, you're going to find that there are a lot of 2 1/4 inch squares. And you want to make sure that you've got the pattern printed out in color, or you're looking at it maybe on your tablet so you can see exactly where to position each of those colors. Now what I recommend when you're working on this project is just to work in smaller segments. Think about it like you're putting together a giant puzzle. I like to just work in a smaller segment, put that together, and just keep building on because it's awfully hard to lay out all of those squares in one place unless you've got a big design wall where you can lay it all out and then get it to the sewing machine for sewing. So what I've got here is the top of the head, just a small portion of the quilt. And you'll see that most of the pieces in here are squares or half square triangle units. So very, very easy piecing. And the instructions will let you know how many of those half square triangle units need to be pinks and greens or 2 different shades of pinks and so forth. The other unit that you'll find in here is what we've got creating the eye. And it also becomes kind of the crook of the neck on our little flamingo. And right here I've got 1/2 of the eye. We need a second one of these units, and I want to show you how those come together. So there's only one sort of unusual shape in the pieces of this project, and you'll find it in both the eye and kind of in the crook of the neck right here. So here it is in the eye, and here it is in the neck. And it's created with 3 triangles. Now before I stitch this together, I like to just kind of lay it out and make sure that I'm positioning all my fabrics in the right direction. So the first step is to sew together these 2 smaller triangles, and I'm just going to lay them on top of each other, right sides together, take this to the machine, and stitch it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now that I've got that stitched, and those are 1/4 square triangles, by the way. You cut a larger square, cut it diagonally twice to create a 1/4 square triangle. I'm just going to kind of lay that back out again, make sure it's looking right. And now I'm going to add my larger triangle along the bottom like this. So you could, of course, give this a good press. I'm just going to kind of finger press mine. And we'll take it to the machine, and once again, we'll stitch it with our 1/4 inch seam. All right, once that unit is complete, you're going to give it a good press. And this should measure 2 1/4 inches, just like the squares in the project. You can always trim it down if it's not quite there. And that is how we end up constructing the eye unit on our little flamingo. Now it's time to start piecing this together in rows. And I get a lot of questions about how you keep your rows straight as you're piecing, because I know that it's very easy to kind of flip around our pieces and end up with something in the wrong spot. So I'm going to show you one of the tricks that I like to use. I will literally take my pieces right on my cutting mat like this, or just something that's transportable, right to the machine, and I'm going to work in sections. So I'm going to start just on the right side here, and I'm going to take the farthest right column of pieces and stack them on the next piece over, and then I'm going to stitch from the top to the bottom. I'm just going to chain piece these. I'll stitch from the top to the bottom and then we'll lay them back out. Okay, and now that I've pieced them, I'm going to lay them right back on my table. We could come in and give those tails a little snip. And then you're just going to press them one at a time and lay them back out on your station. So let's give it a little finger press here. And you're, again, just going to lay them back out. From there, if you move to the next set of columns here, the next two over, lay them right on top of each other, stitch them all the way down. Move on over, stitch all of these, and then you can put your pieces together in rows and then join the rows one to another. So that's kind of how I like to keep my pieces organized when I'm working on a project that has so many components like this flamingo. So I think that if you just take a little bit of time, kind of strategize how you're going to stitch, work in smaller segments of the project. It is nice to have a design wall because then you can kind of lay those segments that you've completed on your design wall and just keep building it together as you go. And again, just spending a little bit of time to strategize how you're going to piece it together saves time in the long run, because if you get those pieces mixed up, it can be kind of challenging sometimes to try and put it all back together. Now you'll find that in this project there are several sections of dramatic colors. You've got a lot of pinks and greens in the body. When you get down toward the legs, you add in some browns. Then we get to where there's some water and you add in blue. So kind of working in segments based on which color is appearing in the quilt next, I think kind of helps to keep things organized as you piece and plan. I hope that you've enjoyed learning about this cute little flamingo project, and come back and see me again on My First Quilt. My First Quilt is brought to you by Baby Lock, Free Spirit Fabrics, Madeira, and Hobbs Batting.